When Donald Trump's first pick for Attorney General, Fox News fixture, loyal Trump ally, and Florida man Matt Gaetz went down in flames, rejected by just enough Senate Republicans to doom his nomination, Donald Trump turned to the next best thing. Another Fox News fixture, loyal Trump ally, and a Florida woman. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi is his second pick to lead the Justice Department. It's worth noting she brings significantly more legal experience to the table than Matt Gaetz, having been the AG of the country's third largest state for 8 years. But that's not why Trump is nominating her. Pam Bondi has been by Trump's side through thick and thin. Back in 2013, when she was Florida's Attorney General, she ignored nearly 24 complaints about the for-profit Trump University, declining to join a multi-state lawsuit after the Trump Foundation donated $25,000 to a PAC supporting Bondi. It was an illegal donation, by the way. Trump had to pay a $2,500 fine for it back in 2016. The incident led Stephen Colbert to say this.
One thing's for sure, Pam Bondi is the only person in the world ever to make money from Trump University. Now, I don't know, other than Donald Trump.
Bondi went on to defend Trump in his first impeachment trial. She peddled the baseless election fraud claims Trump used to try to overturn the 2020 election. She was by his side at his criminal trial in Manhattan, and through it all, even when she was Florida's AG, she was a Fox News personality, peddling all sorts of right-wing talking points and conspiracies.
Murderers, rapists from Venezuelan prisoners coming straight into our country. They are coming to a town near you. It should scare and terrify everyone in this country.
We do have evidence of cheating, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we are still on the ground in Pennsylvania. I'm here right now, and we are not going anywhere until they declare that we won Pennsylvania.
Pam, did you just say fake ballots?
There could be. That's the problem. If they're letting, we don't know, Steve.
Do you have you heard stories of, ballots that are fake? And if so, just tell us what you know.
Well, we know that ballots have been dumped. There were ballots that were found early on.
This is just one big press conference trying to smear Donald Trump, trying to hurt Donald Trump. Do I want to see him in jail? Absolutely not. I wouldn't put it past this judge, though. And President Trump should be allowed to be out on the campaign trail every single day. This trial shouldn't even be going until after the election.
Let me ask.
Listen, all the rights here, I'm a prosecutor, former prosecutor. Yeah, all the rights here go to the defendant because it's his liberty at stake, and that has not been happening in this courtroom. This case should have never, ever been brought.
Pam Bondi also brings with her some eyebrow-raising baggage. The New York Times reports that she is, quote, a lobbyist for a powerhouse Republican firm for which she represented major corporations and foreign governments with interests before the U.S. government. Among the clients for which she was registered to lobby were major companies, including Amazon, General Motors, and Uber, as well as the Qatari government. On that last client, USA Today reports Bondi lobbied for Qatar's government while a partner at Ballard Partners, which reported paying $375,000 during a 6-month period in 2018 and 2019. The State Department has strong relations with Qatar, but the department also reported significant human rights abuses in the country, including the enforced disappearance of social media users and human rights advocates, arbitrary arrests, gender-based violence, and serious restrictions on free expression. And that is where we start the hour with former top official at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann. Also joining us, former Republican Congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly. And with me at the table, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. It is good to see you all. Lisa, I'll start with you. What do we need to know about Pam Bondi?
Well, the first thing I think people should know about Pam Bondi is when you were talking about her career as a lobbyist at Ballard Partners is no stranger to former President and future President Donald Trump. In fact, it's where Susie Wiles really built her career. And so in turning to Pam Bondi, you can see the potential hand of Susie Wiles all over that nomination. But the other thing that I think folks should understand about Pam Bondi is that her experience in government is extensive, even though her experience with the Department of Justice is relatively zero, right? She's never worked at the Department of Justice before. On the other hand, she was a prosecutor for 26 years altogether, 18 years in the Hillsborough County prosecutor's office in Florida, and then another 8 years as Florida Attorney General. And in that respect, from a resume perspective alone, what she reminds me of is someone that I don't think anyone saw coming in this conversation, which is Janet Reno, who was Bill Clinton's Attorney General, having spent multiple terms as the state attorney of Miami-Dade County. That means that Pam Bondi, if she's confirmed, will be all the more reliant on those people that Donald Trump is going to staff the department with who do have that Justice Department experience. The combination of Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, two people who have the two traits Trump was allegedly most looking for, competence and loyalty, is a dangerous 1-2 punch where we're talking about how the Department of Justice is deployed to fulfill the Trump agenda.
And Andrew Weissmann, I want to know how you think that's going to play out at DOJ. But first, I have to give the rights to David Jolly as a Florida man to comment on the Florida woman and what you know about her based on her time as AG.
Sure. Yeah, and I know Pam Bondi and I know Matt Gaetz, and I would tell you these are two very different nominations, and we should breathe a little sigh of relief because the strong differences between Matt Gaetz and Pam Bondi are this. Pam Bondi is eminently qualified to run the department. Lisa's right, no DOJ experience, but she is 8 years as Attorney General of the state of Florida. She's eminently qualified. She's also a very likable person. I say that not because I have a personal friendship, but Democrats and Republicans alike consider her to be a professional. And so I think she'll do very well in the nomination hearing. She also hasn't been accused credibly of sexual misconduct or sex trafficking. So what this sets up, though, is really fascinating, Alicia, and it's this. This nomination hearing now becomes specifically not about the fitness of the nominee, like we were discussing with Matt Gaetz, but about Donald Trump's view of the Department of Justice and about Pam Bondi's willingness to execute on Donald Trump's agenda. Now this goes very quickly, the questioning does in a Senate confirmation hearing, to do you think the Department of Justice should be an arm of the executive office of the president? Do you think that if Donald Trump suggests you prosecute a specific individual, that you have a duty to the president to honor that wish? And we've seen this game before on Capitol Hill. Pam Bondi cannot answer those questions any other way but how Donald Trump wants those questions answered. And so however likable she is and however qualified she is, we now have a national conversation about whether or not Donald Trump's Attorney General truly is intended to execute on an enemies list, to investigate the media. What are the other priorities of an Attorney General Pam Bondi? I believe she will sail through the nomination process on a strictly partisan line vote. And that partisan line vote will be because that this will be Donald Trump's new view of a unitary executive using the Department of Justice as an arm of the executive office of the president. There will be some hard questions for Pam Bondi, no question. You bring up the relationship with Brian Ballard. Brian Ballard, one of the most powerful Florida lobbyists, not having a D.C. firm until Donald Trump gets elected, and then he sets up shop in D.C. and populates his firm with the likes of Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, and other people exceedingly close to Donald Trump. And so you can follow Pam Bondi's career from a relatively mainline Republican, and then Donald Trump hits the scene, and she's part of Team Trump. And over the last 8 years has demonstrated that loyalty, that willingness to really do anything he asks, and raises some really hard questions then. Do you think the election was stolen in 2020? What about those comments in Pennsylvania? I think this will be a hard confirmation hearing for Pam Bondi. I think she'll get through it, but I think it's going to open up the lens a little bit to what 4 years of Donald Trump's DOJ is really intended to look like.
Andrew, I wonder if you agree with David Jolly's analysis about what that confirmation hearing looks like, that Pam Bondi has no choice but to say what it is Donald Trump wants to hear, because in some ways that might be more transparent than her going through that confirmation hearing and saying, no, of course it should exist as a separate and independent branch. Of course it should have its own sense of oversight. I mean, I wonder if Susie Wiles, for example, is able to say, let's get through this confirmation hearing. Let's keep things status quo. And then wink, wink, we know how you feel about this.
Yeah, I don't know whether she is going to be completely candid about what her plans are and how she views the executive. But I think that what we do know right now is all of her prior statements and her record. And I think one thing that is important is for our viewers not to sort of recalibrate simply because there's sort of a new normal that she's not Matt Gaetz. That's not the standard for whether somebody should be the Attorney General of the United States. It's also not the standard that you've been a state prosecutor for many, many years. Absolutely, she has that experience. But the real issue is, I think, sort of the second part of what David was talking about, which is, one, does she believe in that facts and law are what is supposed to govern the Department of Justice and all decision making? Two, do you think it's right for the president to say who you should prosecute and who you should not prosecute? And so questions like, do you believe there was a stolen election in 2020 are totally appropriate ones. When she talks about going after, political enemies of Donald Trump, is that the appropriate role for the Department of Justice? She should have to defend and justify those prior statements or walk them back, because that is really the critical issue. It's not whether you are Matt Gaetz, who is completely unqualified. It is not whether you have serious sexual criminal investigation that there's a report that you're trying to not make public. And so I think she does have a lot to answer for. And finally, on the $25,000 that you began the show with, Alicia, I think there's sort of two issues. Obviously, she and Donald Trump say there was no quid pro quo. That is certainly an area worthy of questioning to see whether that in fact is true. But my issue with that is, let's assume there was no quid pro quo. That's a big assumption, but let's assume that. What prosecutor takes $25,000 from somebody who is under investigation? That simply raises the specter of really, really poor ethics and really poor judgment. And that is the foundation of that is sort of the opposite of what you want.